My name is Jane Muncy from Hyden, Kentucky, and the name of my story is Merrywise, told by my grandmother. Once upon a time, there was a little boy, and he had two brothers, Tom and Bill, and his name was Merrywise. And they lived in a little town, and their mother died. So they didn't have anywhere to go and no one to stay with. So their neighbor was a very kind woman, and she wanted Merrywise to stay with her while they went out to seek their fortune, but he wouldn't stay. So they were bound to take him with them. He went, and as they started, they came to a house. They traveled a long time. And when they came to this house, they knocked on the door, and a woman came to the door with long hair. And she had a long nose and was real ugly. And he says, may we stay all night here? And she says, yes, little boy. He says, you're so cute, I believe I'll let you be my little grandson. He says, all right, Granny. So they went in the house, and it came night, and they got ready to bed down. And this old woman just happened to be a witch. And she loved to kill people, and she was going to kill Tom and Bill. So she put red caps on Tom and Bill, and she had two boys, and she put white caps on her boys, and she told Merrywise he must sleep with her. So Merrywise and her got in the bed, and the boys laid down on the floor with white caps and red caps on. Tom and Bill fell sound asleep soon, and Merrywise did too, but in the middle of the night he woke up. Something was bothering him. He looked up and saw the woman sitting on the edge of the bed. She was mumbling in a low voice, I'll get up and whip my knife, I'll get up and whip my knife. And then after he heard this, he said, well, I'll get up with you, Granny. And she said, no, you go back to bed. He said, no, I'm not sleepy. So she said, I'll go with you. So they laid down, and soon he heard her snore, and he knew she was asleep. So he got up and kicked his brothers and woke them up and changed their caps, and he says, you be ready to go when I wake you up now. So he went back to bed and started snoring too to pretend like he was asleep. And soon his, which he called Granny, woke up and sit on the edge of the bed and said, I'll get up and whip my knife, I'll get up and whip my knife. And then he heard her, but really he pretended like he was asleep. So she thought he was asleep, and she went over and looked at the boys, which had the white caps on, and cut their heads off. She really thought it was Tom and Bill, but it was her boy. And she went back to bed, pleased and contented, and laid down and went to sleep. Merrywise got up just as soon as he heard her snore once more, and kicked his brothers, and they got up and went out. And as they came through the chicken yard, Tom picked up an egg. As they came out the gate, Bill picked up a rock. And as they got down the path, Merrywise picked up a hickory nut. And they came on and traveled until it was almost the middle of the next day. But the old woman had not found out until then that it was her boy she killed and not Tom and Bill. So she made a storm and put on her 7-mile step boots and started after them. Soon she gained up with them, and when she did, she said, I'll get you this time. And then Bill threw down his rock, and a great rock wall came around her. She cried and screamed for all the beasts in the forest to come and beat a hole big enough for her to crawl through. And after a few days they did, and they got a hole beat through so she could come, and she crawled through the hole and started out again, 7-mile step, 7-mile step, 7-mile step, and pretty soon she caught up with them again. Then Bill threw down his egg, and a great river of egg yellow came around her, and she couldn't even see the shore. So she screamed and hollered and cried. I guess her mouth was big enough for all the beasts in the forest to hear, and they came and licked a path big enough for her to come through, and she came through, and then she went on. So she soon caught up with him with her 7-mile step boots. Merrywise threw down his hickory nut, and she says, well, if you're going to do that, I can too. So they ran up the tree, and she ran up the tree after him, and they ran down the other side, and she ran down. And they ran back up. And she says, I won't fool with you anymore. My legs are rusted, and I can't run up that tree after you. So she took out a bag, a funny-looking bag, out of her pocket, and opened it up, and she said, Bill, jump down in my puddin'-tuddin' bag. And Bill said, all right, so he jumped down into the bag. And then she says, Tom, jump down in my puddin'-tuddin' bag. And Tom jumped down. And she says, Merrywise, jump down in my puddin'-tuddin' bag. And he says, I won't do it. Granny, I don't obey you. And she said then, Well, I'll come up after you. She came up and he went down. And it went on like that for a while, and she got tired. And he got down first. He poured his brother's out of a bag and opened it up, and he says, Granny, jump down into my pudding-tudding bag. And she jumped down, and they put rocks in the bag and tied her up and threw her in the river and killed her. And they went back to their house and lived happy ever after.